Good afternoon, my people. Welcome to another episode of Intimate Conversations with Isa Favored. Oh, it's been okay. So what I usually do, I do more than one recording in one day. So it's been a long day. Like, it's been long, but I'm here and I get excited when I get here. So you are welcomed. And if you have not yet subscribed, do the right thing, Taylor. Click that button. Subscribe, notification button. If you have not shared anything with anyone, forward any of my conversation, nalapo, fix it. Forward the conversation to somebody else and tell them to subscribe to the channel. We must grow it and we must grow it together. I talk, all of us, then we do the sharing and we're growing it and we're doing this thing together. Ne? I hope you're good. I'm good. Other than being tired, I am good. But I look fresh. Ne? All right. Today we are talking learning disabilities. I think as a parent, when you have a child, you expect that they will cruise through school with any other child. And when the teachers call you to say it's like we have a problem here, it's one of those things that can weigh heavily on you as a parent. It may seem like it is the end of the world because I think every parent does not want to hear anything negative about their children. So I thought let's educate each other so that we know if you ever find yourself in that situation, what are you supposed to do? What does it actually mean? That is the purpose of today's conversation. And I am no expert. I got my kiwami. She is no stranger to this place. She is a Comrades runner. I had her last year when she was preparing for Comrades. Funny enough, we back at it again. She's preparing again for Comrades. When we were trying to schedule time, she was like, hey, Maki, I actually is too early. I need afternoon and she ran 21 kilometers today. She went to clean the house. I hope she was not baking. And because she also bakes, she does a whole lot of things. But she's here. Welcome. How was the run?
Thank you very much, Maki. The run was good. The weather was perfect in the morning. We are in the critical stages of piling a mileage because running from Durban to Pietermaritzburg, it's not a joke. And we've done a up run. The last up run was 2019. Oh, so all of us is kind of like confused in terms of, do you still remember your old strategies? So that's the stage we are at. But thank you so much, Maki. And honestly, to your viewers, I almost declined because this is really critical times. But because it's you, I had to really come in and as part of my profession, which is the topic that you're talking about, it's something that I've studied, and from a mother's perspective as well, I've observed my kids. So it's a condition that I have a soft spot for it because of the misperceptions and the misunderstandings and quite a lot of being misinformed. When you are told or when you suspect a learning disability from your child, you don't know what to do, you think there's something wrong that you have done. So it's a beautiful topic and I hope that your listeners will share with others and will help someone else after today's conversation.
I really hope so. I really hope so. Like as a mother, you say, when for you as a profession, you're an occupational therapist, right?
Yes.
So you've also just studied about it. But as a mother, when either you suspect or you get that call to say, come and sit with a teacher, ngoba we have a problem, go another thing that just disturbs your peace. Something true. Just in your world changes because you think, this is the end of the world. What is a learning disability? Before we get to the kinds of learning disabilities, learning disability?
A learning disability, it's a group of neurodevelopmental disorders. And when we say neurodevelopmental, it's something that happens when the child is still being developed. in the utero. Okay. So it's not something that we can say you acquire when you are born. The difference is it gets identified when you start schooling. Okay. Because you can still miss it. So it's a group of disorders that actually prevents a person to learn new skills. And it goes with reading, it goes with writing, it goes with calculations, it goes with a lot of skills that actually prepares us for whatever form of career that you are probably going to do in life. And it also affects your attention and understanding certain concepts as you go along. Hence, it's not easy for a parent to identify a learning disability before the child starts school. Because it's when they start schooling now that it gets diagnosed at a school-going age. But sometimes it gets missed. And it becomes picked up when a person is at varsity or when they start working, yes.
Can it be missed at that stage?
Yes, it can.
Well, it will depend on what disability it is, or all of them can easily be missed.
It can depend in terms of the type of that learning disability, because there are those that you can pick up. There are those that you will pick them up at a later stage. And the other thing that is very important is we should not confuse a learning disability and an intellectual disability. Okay. Because now, someone with a learning disability, their intelligence is average to superior. So it has got nothing to do with their intelligence. It has got something to do with learning, processing. Yes, it's about processing in the brain. While an intellectual disability is something that has got to do with your intelligence. So a person with a learning disability does not mean has got an intellectual disability. But a person with an intellectual disability who has been diagnosed with an intellectual disability, ihambisana learning disability. So these are the two things where we need to draw a line. Because you find a child is able to sing and do things at home, then at school they call you, but you say my child is clever. Yes, your child is clever, but your child, the brain of your child does not process all the information, all the learning things that they've been taught. So as the word says learning, it's something that you are taught. But everything happens when you are still developing, because it happens when your brain is being developed. Because when your brain is being developed, we've got your speech areas that gets developed in the brain. You've got your hearing areas, which is your auditory areas. You've got your frontal area, which is your thinking, your decision making, your planning. So when that area in the brain does not develop, when your mom is pregnant, you are prone. When you go into school, when you start school, teachers will pick up the disability.
Will it be something that can be picked up at pre-primary grade grade R, or it will wait for grade 1?
For grade R, luckily our kids, mind, they start school at early age 2 years, because mothers, actually families are working. So a child does not stay with the helper at home. At preschool, they will identify in terms of a child might not be able to identify colors, might not be able to identify shapes. I'm just going to take it's just that when my kids grew up in the era where Tupperware still used to have toys, né? Okay. So I used to buy those ball tops there. I think it was a hexagon shape, where it came with different types of shapes, where a child needs to put in that shape. So you can identify when your child is having a concept of identifying shape, because you expect when you give a child a triangle, will be able to see on the sample that this is a triangle, that is where it goes. So from as early as a not even primary, a crash, that's the name we see Joanne. Or from a crash, our mistress was a crash, they'll be able to identify, because you can see Mangena Imatlasin as a crash, they will put the colors, then they will put blue, they will probably put the sky. You see now the association. So that is why now as a child you begin to learn that, oh, when I see something that is blue, blue is associated with the ocean, blue is associated with the sky, blue is associated with the car. When you look at an orange color, you know, oh, blue is associated with the sunflower, yellow is associated with the sky. So all these things, they become taught when they start early school. But now in formal schooling, which is in level grade 1, because now the assessment becomes becomes even harder. That's when stress was a grade 1 to grade 3, they are able to identify the problems. What I normally tell parents is a child is not supposed to repeat grade 1.
Okay.
For me, if a child repeats grade 1, it's a red light. Because the child has been stimulated from a crash. And Magafika grade 1, now let's look at what is the child struggling with grade 1. Is the child struggling with looking at the letters that are written on the board and copying them? And if stress I mean, we grew up in the era of now we are exposing our age. We grew up in the area so we are in RAE. So when a teacher writes an A, there are many things involved there. It's eye and hand coordination. So you are looking, you are coordinating. So now these are the things that the teacher will look at. Your eye-hand coordination skill, is it there? Your pencil grip, is it there? And when you write, I mean, are you writing? Our brain, all of us are structured in a pattern that when I write an A, I start on my right, going to my left, and then I come with the stick. But if I start with the stick and go the other way, it means that there is some misconnection in the brain. Yes, we won't worry much because you have produced the letter. But now we go further, we look at the quality of that letter. Because the quality of that letter, say into your writing skills. And a writing skill, if you don't have a proper writing skill, it might put you in the dyslexia aspect.
So
which is another type.
You are already identifying the one.
Yes, yeah. So that's the type. And when it comes to reading, you read, but the child misses some of these words. It becomes something that can be a highlight, which is my child presenting with signs of someone who is dyslexic. Another child will look at the A, but write the A opposite and put the stick on the other side. So now, when they put the stick on the other side, it becomes a P, not an A. So you see, so now it's mismatching what? The letters. And already it tells you that, okay, is this child having a visual problem or what is it? Because when we deal with learning disabilities, we don't just say it's a learning disability. We need to rule eyesight. Maybe the child is not copying correctly from the board because he's got an eye problem. Or the child cannot hear the teacher because he's got a hearing impairment. So these are the things that you'll have to sideline. Your child must be assessed. You know that eyesight is 100%, hearing is 100%. Then it means when my child is looking at something in the board, there is anatomically, there is what we call the visual pathway. When I look at something right now I'm looking at that box. And the box is written photography light. But at the back of my mind, the photography is upside down. That's how it is, yes. Because when the pathway, the visual pathway crosses, it turns the thing down. But now if there is a problem in that pathway, I will write what is written in my brain, which I will write the incorrect letter because of those pathways. Hence, it goes back again to what? That it's something that happens when I was still in the development, that those pathways, they didn't develop the way they were expected to develop.
Okay. When you started, you said, there was something you said, we spoke about, as a parent, it's something you could have done. Now you're saying it's at a developmental stage when the baby is still in the womb. Is there any, in terms of research, that says it is because of whatever, maybe the mother had stress or whatever, that could contribute to that? By so saying, we're also not saying mothers must blame themselves. Uguba, I did not do that, maybe my child would have turned out okay. Or it's just one of those things that there's no explanation to them.
No, there isn't. Others, there's no explanation. Others, there is explanation because it has proved that some of the causes, it's during pregnancy. If as a mother, you were highly stressed during pregnancy or you were a mom who is a diabetic,
a mom with a medical condition, a mom who has been consuming a lot of alcohol, because alcohol does a lot in neurodevelopment of the baby. You are a mom who has been smoking. You are a mom that maybe, let's say, you lost someone in the process, you went into depression. So there's a lot of chemical imbalance in you as a mom that might have affected the baby. So some of the things you can prevent, but some of them you can't prevent at all. Yes, yeah. Or it can be even trauma that probably at home there was a break-in, so you suffered trauma.
And of course, a break-in is a big thing, because then continuously usabakulala.
Yes.
You're thinking, whoo, bayosingenela, will it happen again? So, and throughout the pregnancy, you're carrying this trauma that you're walking
Yes, you're
around
carrying
with.
this trauma, and you are not basically resting, because you are always in this shocked emotion. Ukuthi you are too worried. Yabona ukuthi, hey, something is going to happen. So it's those things that actually one cannot point and say, for you to have a child that has got a learning disability, this is what you have done. Yes, you can still live a healthy lifestyle as a mom, but then you still get a child that has got learning problems.
Okay. So you in a way, you've already explained, but let's go with
Dyslexia.
Dyslexia. It's the one that I see unpack as we go through them.
Dyslexia.
And I don't know whether in your prep you were going to start with others, but
we'll just. I don't have a specific order. As we pick up some things, and now as you feel good, this is one that you want us to deal most on. We will work on them. But I'll just love to touch on the ones that are common.
Yes.
Yeah, the ones that are very common, the ones that you know that majority of the time you will be told that this is what is happening to your child. And like dyslexia is the most common one. And I think most of your viewers have heard about dyslexia, of which dyslexia is a language processing disorder. So when we say it's a language processing disorder, we speak of it's a language that you are having difficulty in speaking the language. I'm not talking about speaking Venda and then you say I'm dyslexic. No, I can't speak Venda. I'm not dyslexic. Yes, ngoba ngumSwati, yabona. It's difficulty in speaking a language that is commonly spoken in your household, a language that you heard when your mom was pregnant. Because one thing that I also need to touch, if I'm not getting my anatomy incorrect, hearing develops, I think, when the mom is 16 weeks pregnant. So you're hearing, so the child at 16 weeks, the child can identify the mom's voice. Yes, they can identify the voice, they can identify everything that, so already the child gets born knowing the mom's voice.
Oh,
yes.
Interesting.
When a child is born, they know the mom's voice. And how do you see that? You see that when the mother comes into the room and they speak, the child pays attention. It's because their hearing got developed at that time. So dyslexia, it's that learning process, a processing disability that you've got difficulty in speaking, you've got difficulty in reading the language, you've got difficulty in writing the language, you've got difficulty in understanding the words, you've got difficulty in developing a vocabulary, you've got difficulty in developing a grammar. You've got difficulty in developing a comprehension. So dyslexia has got to do with language. So anything that is language, writing, reading, it's language. So if your child, your teacher calls you and say, but if I say to your child, read apple, they can't read the apple. They come up with another name that is far from being the apple.
Okay.
Because remember when we are bringing up kids from childhood, before you give your babies food, you will always say, I'm feeding you a potato. That is developing their language. I'm giving you milk. No, you were telling them, guys. You were telling them, more purity. You say, nagugudla, because that's how the language actually in a child starts developing. Yes, yeah.
That is why now when they start talking, they say the words.
Yes.
They will hear us saying Oh, apula, whatever.
Yes, and mama. I need to always say, come to mama, go to papa. So that is stimulating that language. You are stimulating the language, unaware that you are stimulating the
Native, ne?
language. Yes. So these are the things, and I always say, Uguti, don't look at a baby and think they are not hearing anything. You impart. You impart the language. So with the dyslexia, it's because that language processing was not developed.
No.
Yes, it was not developed. So as a result, when the child goes to school, you hear parents saying, my child is 3 years old, but they do not talk. It is a problem if they do not talk, if they do not speak. I mean, I can share. My son was born a preterm baby and started talking at the age of 2 years. But what bothers me as a mother was he went directly into sentence construction, which is not normal.
Okay.
Yes.
Didn't start my mama.
No, he was quiet for the whole 2 years, nothing. Whenever he wanted something, he would just point. But the day he started talking, he went straight into sentence construction, of which I was concerned as an occupational therapist. And I did myself a favor. I took her to a speech therapist because speech therapists are the one that can do a language assessment to check in terms of how far in language development and it turned out that my son's language age, he was below his age group.
Even though he jumped into sentence construction.
Yeah, because that jumping, it's a problem.
Okay. So I'm thinking, sometimes as a parent, we get excited.
Yes,
that, my child did not. That should be a red light.
Yes, it was a red light because, and I noticed that when he was in grade R. Because when he was in grade R, I could see, Uguti, there are some of the things that I'm really not understanding with my child. And the fact that he was not the first child, which it was easier because I've already seen the development of the other kids. And I did myself that favor. I said to myself, I'm going to take you to a speech therapist, let them do the assessment. And the assessment showed that at that time, his language, at the age of 5, his language was at a level of a 3-year-old. So he had to attend speech therapy to catch up. Yes, and with those speech therapy sessions, he caught up.
Okay.
Yes, he caught up because it's going back into the basics, and the basics were to teach him the sounds. To go back and teach him the sounds and try and mold how does a sound come. So these are the things that as parents, yes, it's exciting. Good, my child can speak, can do this, but we need to go back. What are these things? Are they not going to affect them at a later stage? Yes. So dyslexia is the most common one, and that's when most parents, they will fight with teachers and say to teachers, but my child at home can read. By watching Ukokomelon or whatever that they watch on TV and sing along, we think the language has developed.
And it's
mimicking. Because if you had to switch off that rhythm and you say to the child, sing. I was laughing the other day. I posted something on the Father's Prayer. And it was incorrectly said. I was like, you know what? I still know adults who can't even say the Lord's Prayer the right way. It's because we copied. We didn't actually go back and look at the words so that we say the words. So dyslexia is like that. It's easy for you to catch a song, but if we give you the lyrics, to sing with the lyrics that you are looking at the lyrics, you won't be able to read the lyrics. Okay. But if we remove the lyrics, you can sing.
Okay.
Yes. So dyslexia is most, and that is why it's very common, and most parents fail to understand when a teacher says, your child can't read. Then they'll say, but at home, they read after me. Yes, they can read after you because they are following what you are saying. But just show a child and say, read to me, what does it say here? And you'll see the child getting frustrated.
Okay. I actually thought it only got to do with writing. They also write...
Vice versa, yes. They twist the words, or they will omit a letter in their writing, or they will write something that now you can't read, now they can't read.
I can imagine the frustration as a parent when you're trying to do homework with the child in that instance.
And what it said is, with the dyslexia, most people get missed in the system. And how do you see that? You see it when you go into a workspace, that in a workspace you begin to see some of your colleagues that the things that they write, they sometimes don't make sense. But I'm not saying let's go and judge people. I'm not saying let's go and judge people, because hence, you remember when we started, you asked that, can it really be missed from primary and be picked up later? Yes, it's for such things. That it can be missed.
Okay.
And be picked up at a later stage. Or even it can be picked up at work.
And probably at that point, at that stage, there'll be so much denial.
Yes.
Ukuthi, I made it up until this point.
Until now.
How come? Because I don't see that I have a problem. It's people around me.
Around me.
And then you start thinking your supervisor has an issue with you. Why are they questioning your work? You made it through varsity.
And also another factor, which is some of our teachers are not equipped in being precise and being observant, because all these things will be able to be prevented if we've got teachers that are very attentive, if we've got teachers that have got the passion to be able to identify that, you know what, there is a problem here. I mean, even I'll go back and refer with my son, because I can only refer with something that is close to me.
Yes.
When he got into grade 1, the teachers, they didn't actually pick it, they picked it up in the 4th term.
Okay.
But I knew that my son was having the challenges. I didn't tell the school for many reasons.
Okay. Yes.
For victimization,
yes,
you know, for all those things. I was like,
yes.
you know what, I'll continue with you doing your speech therapy. I'm not going to tell anyone. And my expectation from the education system is, term 1 of grade 1, it's not easy to evaluate a child. You as a teacher are still learning them. They are also still learning you. They're still trying to understand your teaching methods and all those things. But from term 2, you should already now be able to identify, good, this child is struggling here, this child is struggling here, this child is struggling here. Never mind that our kids in our government schools, there are probably 100 in a class. The teacher might not have the time, not have the time to do that, you know. But with my son, I expected them to call me in the 2nd term, but I kept quiet until the 4th term, when they started listing all the list of problems that I already knew about and that I'm already attending to them, you know. I don't want to lie, viewers. I was very upset with the teacher. And I told them, I said, my son is not going to repeat grade 1. I literally refused, and he didn't repeat grade 1.
Okay.
He didn't. I said to them, give my son 1st term of grade 2. If he struggles 1st term of grade 2, I am willing
to take him back.
I said, my reason is because you had 3 terms. In these 3 terms, what were you doing as a teacher? Because in these 3 terms, you can't tell me that in these 3 terms you didn't identify a problem.
That was worthy of us sitting.
Yes. I mean, I came the 1st term sitting, you didn't mention anything, which I understand because you are still learning my child. 2nd term, I expected you to start saying, I'm identifying 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. 3rd term, I still see you are telling me a different story. And then 4th term, then either you were not teaching my son. I became very defensive. And God's grace, my son did well.
Okay.
He did well. I mean, he's studying now. He's busy with his career. So it's one of those things that if as a parent, you don't know the challenges of your child, you don't get involved earlier, it's easy for teachers to bully you at times.
Yeah.
It's easy for them to bully you at times. And remember, in the process, when your child also repeats because it's negligence, the child's self-esteem gets affected.
I'm listening to you now, and that's what I was thinking, Wuti, when you said, I'm willing to, if he doesn't do well in 1st term, I'm willing to take him back. That had he not done well, imagine when you thought I'm a grade 2, suddenly you must go back to a grade 1. That will have, but the good thing is that you were aware, you were addressing.
And I was
issues.
actually involving my child as well, being small as he was at that time. Because even when I started with him, with the speech therapy, I told him, I said, my boy, Mommy has identified 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. And this is not in the field that mommy has trained. I'm going to take you to a speech therapist because I'm concerned with your speech. I'm concerned with the way, luckily because a child absorbs at that time, because we're still a child. And he enjoyed those speech therapy sessions because the way they do therapy, it was in a child way.
Yes,
So it
yes.
was even though it was very demanding for me as a parent because he had homework. He had things that he
needed
must
to
do
do.
that comes from school. He had to do because now the speech therapist will tell me that, okay, for this sound, this is how it must be pronounced. For this thing, this is how he must do it when he writes. So it was quite a lot of things. Was very strenuous for both of us. But because at the end of the day, I knew that this was the problem and I needed to solve it. Hence, a learning disability can be something that is corrected. We can correct it, yes. It can be corrected. Like dyslexia. Dyslexia can be corrected if it's identified earlier. Dyslexia can be corrected through speech therapy, can be corrected through occupational therapy, your handwriting skills.
Yes, I wanted us to come to that. Earlier on, you mentioned how the child grabs a pen.
A pen.
Those are your fine.
The fine coordination.
The fine motor.
Fine motor
Where
skills.
I know that one of my sons had to go where you had to do the pegs.
Yes, you
and
do the pegs, you do the picking up
of things.
Yes.
And that's.
I mean, there are quite a lot of adults that I know that they can't put a thread in a needle. That is fine coordination.
Okay. No. It's only now. It's only now that it becomes because the eyesight is also killing
but
me.
you see, this. Remember when we are growing up, we call them the foundation blocks of our lives. All these things that kids are doing, the building blocks, a nursery school. Ne? We normally think, "Good, I'm not going to need those things." Those are the foundations for later on when you are an adult. Because if you miss those foundations, as an adult, you're going to struggle. As an adult, you will find it very hard when something has fell on the floor that is very tiny that you need to pick it up.
And it's a skill that was.
It's a skill that you should have learned when you were still a child. So the occupational therapist on the dyslexic aspect, maybe I will touch even when we look at as we talk about the condition, we talk about the treatment support that you can get. So one of them, it can be the speech therapist, which will look on your language, your sounds, your reading. Then your occupational therapist will come in on your eye-hand coordination, will come on your writing skills. Then we don't really have much of physios unless, if ever, your muscles are very weak.
Okay.
Then you can be given exercises to strengthen your muscles, because we all know that a pen is being held at a specific grip. So it's even called a pencil grip. But you find kids holding it like this. You find people, I mean, there are so many people that we know when they hold pens and write. I always observe, they put pens in very strange, funny ways.
Yeah.
But they have adapted, their brain has adapted. As long as the handwriting, they can read what they have written, somebody else can read. The problem becomes when you can't read what you have written.
Yourself, ne?
Yes, if you can't read what you have written yourself, no offense, go to an OT, they will give you handwriting exercises so that you start practicing the handwriting. I mean, us, the older generation, we were lucky. Go to a primary school, we were taught small lines.
Yes. Where did we start? We started smaller blocks or whatever.
We started writing slate, we rub, then we moved to small lines. And those things, guys, to be honest, angali, what do we call technology has transversed. There's a lot of things that has moved. But some of these things, I personally feel that they should not be taken away.
Yes.
Because they were the basics.
Yes.
I mean, we used the pencils until we got into grade 5 to start using a pen, something like that. And even with the pen, the teachers were very specific in terms of it must not be too big. It must be thin. A fine point, yes. So those are the things that, and remember when you write as well, you need a good elbow, you need a good wrist. So all these things, they still go back. Was your child crawling? Because when you crawl, that's when you're strengthening your muscles. Yes.
So when we get excited that, crawler for 2 days, wasukuma wahamba.
It's a problem.
There's something the child is missing.
The child has missed setting the foundations.
Yeah. Okay.
But we can't say because you've already made that mistake and then you want your child to go back. But observe those things. Observe when your child is sitting around the table actually writing, or how do they write? Because a child with a learning disability will also have concentration problems. They can't do one task and finish it. They do one task. While you are busy in the kitchen, they are already answering you on a conversation that you are having with someone who is in the kitchen.
Nothing to do with them.
Yes, and then they've got memory problems, they lose things. So it's those small little things that you actually need to take note. Because at the end, when you combine them, you can realize that, okay, probably the language is not the problem. The problem with my child is an auditory processing one. That my child hears, but the brain does not change the message that they are hearing. And my child cannot identify my voice when there is a background of other noise, which now is the auditory processing disorder, which it still falls under learning disability. And you hear teachers always saying, but your child does not listen in class. It's because the child cannot separate the sound of the teacher and the sound of the other kids in the class. So as a result, the child end up writing what they think they've heard and it's not what they have heard. Because they cannot shut off. I mean, me and you, we have developed a skill now that we can sit in that game era at Ilanga Mall while they're making noise and still concentrate and do what we're doing without being disturbed.
Yes.
But a child with a learning disability, specifically an auditory processing one, they won't be able to function in that area where there is a background of sound.
Oh, okay.
And that's where now you train the child to actually shut off from what they're hearing in the surrounding.
So that will be through what, a speech therapist or what? Which therapist will they go to for support?
It will be for speech therapy, because now the speech therapy is going to train them in actually focusing on their space. As an occupational therapist, you are going to train them in focusing on concentration.
Okay. Okay.
So that is the auditory processing disorder that still falls under learning disabilities.
Okay.
And then we've got the dyscalculia, which this one they've got difficulty with mathematics problems.
Okay.
They can't count money. They can't solve mathematical formulas. So anything that has got to do with calculations, they can't even tell time.
Okay.
Yes. So when you ask them what time is it, they can't read the time. Because remember, time is in numbers.
It's in numbers,
Yes. So it doesn't matter whether it's analog or it's digital. So they can't read. So those one is dyscalculia. And these are the kids that they struggle with maths when it comes to high school. And unfortunately, as parents, the Department of Education having the structure, I stand to be corrected, that each child must do maths. It doesn't matter whether now they call it the pure maths and the maths and the maths lit.
Is one of the compulsory. You've got to have, if you don't do pure maths,
you do maths lit.
Yes.
And the reason for that is because we don't want to raise an adult that does not know how to count money.
Because I'm sure that's why it's literacy. It's called maths.
Yes,
because it's
yes.
just the basics.
The basics, yes.
Of
Yeah,
maths.
it's the basics of maths. So if a child is having a dyscalculia, they are struggling with maths, you can even put them on Miss Literacy, but they will still
struggle.
They will still struggle.
Is there help?
It's not easy, especially if now they are already in high school. It's just to assess with whatever concept that they can grasp.
Okay.
Then you nurture them in that concept. Because you might find that in a maths formula, for example, they only master addition, but cannot master division. So then you have to value in terms of, is division really important? And if division is important, is it going to contribute in this child's future? If, let's say, for example, a child is struggling with a dyscalculia, but in future wants to be a baker, but cannot grasp the division concept, you see now it's going to affect the career.
Because
Because baking has got something to do with calculation. And if the child wants to be in the finance field and has got a problem with maths, you cannot go into a finance field. And these are the things that as parents, as we guide our children concerning the careers that they are going to choose, let us look at the things that they are choosing. Is it going to bring a frustration on them or not a frustration?
Yeah.
Because you find a child that says, I want to work in an environment or in a space where it's about money, but can you calculate?
The basics.
The basics, because I know that abantu abaku finance, every 5 cent and 2 cent counts. If you're making those small mistakes, you'll be fired in that job.
Yes.
Because you're going to cost that company a lot of money.
Yeah.
So those are the kids that you can assist them in terms of extra lessons at home. So it dyscalculia, you easily pick it up when they start doing serious maths, like grade 4, grade 5. Because that's when now you can see, Uguti, the more work you give in terms of mathematics, they are struggling. Yes. But grade 1, grade 2, because it's just 1 plus 1 and 2 are still the small figures. And nalapo, we need to be very careful because it's easy to say to a child, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. My child can count from 1 to 10. But can the child still look at a 1 and point that this is a 1?
This is 1.
This is a 10. So we shouldn't get excited and say, my child can count to 100. Yes, they can count to 100, but can they identify? When you put a 5 on the table, can they identify that this is a 5?
That is why you see grade 1, I take my hat off to teachers because that's where the basics are being taught.
Are being laid, yes.
Where the numbers, I remember my grandson was doing grade 1, let's say he's grade 2. So the numbers 1 to 100, every day we had to look at those and so that it also, they can...
Yes, remember we go back, it's a processing disorder. It's how you process. And if you miss the stimulation in stimulating the processing part, you are going to miss the mark.
To miss it. Okay.
So those are, so we have already tackled on dyslexia, we have tackled auditory processing disorder, then we have tackled dyscalculia.
Yes.
So the other one that I want us to look at is visual perception or visual motor. So this one I've been putting it in, it has got something to do with difficulty with coordination, either be your motor skills or be your eye-hand coordination. And this one, it also goes hand in hand with reading because it's when you eliminate words as you are reading. So if you are having a visual perceptual disorder, and if visual perceptual disorder is when you look at something and you perceive it in a different manner.
Yeah.
So you are looking, I'm looking at that box. But when I'm about to talk about that box, to me, I'll be like, that is a circle shape, while it's a rectangle shape. Okay. So it's how you perceived after you have viewed, visually. So it's the link of visually looking at it, processing it, and producing it the way it is. Yeah.
Okay. I thought sometimes it's just laziness. The person just decide to give because they're lazy to think what exactly it is. So it's a bit of a challenge.
That is why you can see with kids, when you give them the shapes, and then you say, this is a circle, this is a square, this is a triangle. You have shown them visual input. Then you say, okay, show me a square. Now there are two things that are there. There is auditory, which they need to listen and process what you have said, and show you a square, because you have already visually gave them an input. Then the child gives you a square or right. Then you introduce a sound in the background. You say to a child, give me a square. A child with an auditory processing problem
will go to the second.
Will go to something else because it's unable to shut off the other sounds in the background. So hence you can pick up a lot of things. That is why the whole team of occupational therapists, the whole team of speech therapists, they are able in a session to pick up even other problems while you are working with the child.
Ne? what I'm picking up through and through, I know we're going to go to the next one, is also the willingness of the parent to participate in these interventions, that the support that must be given to the child. It can be that as a parent you just say, no, I've already taken them to see an OT, whatever assignments that are given to you to do, you need to do them.
You know, parents, it's hard to be a parent.
Very hard. Very.
It's not easy to be a parent, it's hard. And why is it hard? Is because, firstly, these therapies, they don't come cheap.
Yes.
There's money involved. And you find families where they will either take a child for 1 or 2 sessions and then the child stops for the duration. I mean, if it took me 4 years for my son to attend speech therapy, that was a lot of money then. 4 years, weekly session. I'm not talking once a month session. Weekly session. So can you imagine that here you are told that your child needs this therapy, you take your child for therapy, there's money involved. They come back with homework from that therapist. And they still have got their homework from school.
Yes.
And you still have got your own issues of work and life. Bonke in one bowl. So that is why at the end you find with him, some parents, they'll only take the child once, and then at the end they stop. I will share. I had a colleague who approached me, was telling me of the son having problems. I was like, okay, listening to you, your child needs an occupational therapist and a speech therapist. Took the child there, came back, and someone who can afford, came back and said to me, these people, they are so expensive, wara. Then stopped taking the son. I can't remember if the child went 2 or 3 times, but stopped. Now 2 years later, she comes to me, she say, hey, the problems have started. And I'm thinking, which problem? Says, hey, Pella, my son at school, they are making him to repeat because this and this and this are a problem. And then I was like, but what happened? Because I said, that was too expensive, I stopped. I'm like, but you see now that you have actually made your child to go back.
It's even more expensive.
And now it's even worse that you have caused your son to repeat a grade,
yes,
of which is something that you would have prevented. So as parents, I know it's expensive, but we can rather negotiate with those therapists and say, I cannot afford a weekly appointment. I can only afford once a month. Give me the homework for once a month. But remember, you must also be willing, or when the child is not going for therapy, you will become the therapist. Yes.
Either way, there's no way out of it. An effort must be put in.
An effort must be put in, yes, to help your child.
And if you do that, you are almost guaranteed that they will overcome that disability.
No, they will overcome the disability. What is nice with learning disabilities, once it's picked up very early, some of these conditions, they can be lessened. They might not go 100%, but the child will be able to function as an adult. Because at the end of the day, it's about functionality when you're an adult.
Yeah.
Because when you're an adult, you don't want to bring up a child that will be dependent on you as a family member, of which that's what is different with an intellectual disability. Because an intellectual disability, those kids, they still depend on you as a family. Because intellectual disability, I normally say they become your babies for life, but also depending on the level where they are at. Okay. Yeah, if it's a moderate intellectual disabled child, those ones they will go until grade 8. Until grade 10, then they can only do technical works. They can do practical things. Then if it's a mild, if it's a moderate, it's a profound one. The profound one are the ones that even if, no matter how old they are, they still become your babies because they cannot bat themselves, they cannot think for themselves. So that is why an intellectual disabled child, it's more difficult to handle than a learning disability one. Because a learning disability, just the name learning, it says it all.
You can be taught.
You can be taught, yes. Yeah. Because at the end, we want you to be functional, and that is the role of an occupational therapist, that in whatever forms of occupations that you play a role in, you must be functional in that aspect.
Okay. Do we have another one?
There's,
Common?
no, those are the common ones. The other one is learning processing, which is difficulty in learning the spoken language. But the spoken language is the language that you speak at home, not other languages. I mean, South Africa has got 12 official languages, sign languages, it's being included. So if you can't speak sign language or you can't speak Venda, you don't have a language, you don't have a language problem.
Okay. I saw one here, dysgraphia.
Okay, dysgraphia is grammar.
Okay.
Yes, dysgraphia is it's grammar. It has got something to do with grammar, which it goes into the one that I mentioned earlier as I was explaining languages, yes, with your grammar, your vocabulary.
Okay.
So it has got to do with your grammar, that when you write your words, your vocabulary, you mix the words. Instead of writing bat, B-A-T, you write B-U-T, but.
Oh.
Yes, instead of writing, and unfortunately, mind you, social media is teaching us a lot of wrong grammar.
Yeah.
We abbreviate too much, we shorten too much, and we are unlearning what we have been taught. And we need to encourage, especially families, mothers and dads out there, if you are still having school-going kids, encourage them when they send you messages to write in full. Please, can I emphasize on that? Let your children stop writing lama abbreviations. I don't even understand. I don't understand because that is now we are actually reversing what has been taught.
Yes.
So my plea to viewers at home, encourage your kids as long as they are still at school. Encourage them. They must write messages for you in full. Because this is where you can pick up. Yes, there's autocorrect. When you see something that is wrong from the message, ask them, what do you mean? So that they can correct
themselves.
Yes. So dysgraphia, it's the grammar.
Okay.
Yeah, it's the grammar. Grammar and vocabulary, those things. And it's small little things, that is the small little mistakes, but with the dysgraphia, it's in a sentence, the mistakes are many. Yes. In that like grammar.
Try to make sense of
in
what
that comprehension. In that comprehension says when you do not understand. Because having one spelling mistake, it's not dysgraphia. Let's rule that one out.
Yes.
But you are writing, here I am. Here, it's H-E-R-E.
Yes.
Then when ubala H-E-R, ne? Ubala uhe, not here. Ne? Going, you write G-O, ne? N-G. You eliminate the I. So the whole sentence is wrong. And for the person, if you say, okay, you have written this, what are you trying to tell me? Ne? What they are telling you is different from what is written. Yes.
Okay. Mikey, thank you. Thank you, one, for agreeing to come through despite the busyness of your schedule and the comrades' preparation and everything. But thank you, because we are about educating, making sure that we learn, we have knowledge, because knowledge is power. When you know, then you are able to identify. I think one of the things also, we must also know that we are not gonna suddenly diagnose with one or two. It will take you must have been exposed to that person for a long time to say, surely there is a problem here that needs to be attended to. But thank you so much. Your parting last shots to parents or anyone with a child that they are living with in terms of this area?
My parting words for parents out there is, do not be defensive when you are called that your child is having a challenge.
Yes.
Go there with an objective ear to listen, number one. Number two, make it your own mission to start observing your child, to see if what at school they have identified is what you're identifying. Number three, share with someone. because there are many parents whom their kids have been to therapists.
Yes.
Talk to someone and say, you know what, this is what they're telling me about my child at school. You will speak to someone who has walked that journey, and they will walk that journey with you. And don't be afraid of therapists. I just forgot to mention that the other key people in learning disabilities are educational psychologists.
Okay.
So don't be afraid to approach. I mean, I'm a runner. I don't know how many runners come to me with, hey, you know what, can I ask this? I don't charge.
Yes.
You know?
Yes.
I mean, we know people in different open spaces. And it's like, if I know that Maki is a lawyer, I've got a legal, I'm like, hey, Maki, you know what, so. Then I get an advice.
Yes.
But those are the things that seek advices, help your child. We don't want to bring up kids that are going to be problematic. And lastly, teach your kids to write you messages in full.
Yes. Yes.
Teach your kids to write messages in full, because you don't want to unlearn what they have been taught at school. And as well, encourage your kids to always have got a new word that they say to you, especially those with kids in primary school. They must expand on their vocabulary. Yes.
Wow, thank you so much. You've heard it. That talk to people. I think one of the biggest mistakes that we sometimes do as parents is you feel like it's a shame, this is my problem, I can't share. But when you share with somebody, you'll find that it's either the person themselves, because we've got young parents now, it could be that the very same parent you're talking to had that problem, that challenge when they grow up, when they were growing up and they have been saved, they got help and they are now, they are now okay. So when a child is diagnosed with a learning disability, it's not the end of the world. It is not an embarrassment. It's something that you can get help for. Seek help, do the work. More than anything, you cannot outsource helping your child. That is your responsibility. So make sure that you come into the equation, you do the work that is required, invest. If it needs that you spend money, do that. Because honestly speaking, sometimes we say it's a lot of money, but you go to the mall and you spend that money on things that will not help the child in the future. So let's just make sure that we take an active interest in our children and we do what is necessary to help them to become adults that can cope. Mikey says they must be able to cope as adults and not become a problem. Thank you so much for tuning in. Until next time, you do take care. And if you have not subscribed, do the right thing. Subscribe. Click the notification button. And I'll see you next time. Take care.